listening to Talkin' Shop.
Professors and students making sense.
Today's topic is
The Republicans take control.
And we're back, and we have another great show for you today. It's a holiday, so the students aren't here, but we have some spectacular guests. We've got our usual friend and expert, Dr. Edward Fitzgerald from the Political Science Department, and we're very lucky today to have a special expert in elections, in political science, Dr. Lee Hanna. You've probably heard of him. Lee, I'm very happy that you joined us today.
I've been looking forward to this. Yeah, it's been fun to watch these.
We appreciate the positive feedback as well that you've given us. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the election, the aftermath, and what to expect for the future. A lot of people are hitting this issue, and, I know some people might be tired of hearing about it. I'm certainly one who's tired of hearing about the election. But at the same time, we are all political scientists, and we all understand these things. We have to study them. We have to talk to students, explain it. And there's a lot of interesting stuff here. This is not a normal election. I think we have an obligation to get into it. Let's start off with the first topic. Why did they lose? Now, you notice I use the word they, the Democrats. And some people take a different view on this. They think, why did she lose? I don't hold that view. I don't hold the view that she lost. I hold the view that they lost. Well, let's go around the table. Why did they lose?
I agree with your assessment that they lost and not she lost, which we'll get into. I think the simplest answer, the one that I wasn't necessarily believing on on election day, is that in this global economy, the party that owns the coronavirus response has just been wiped out. And I believe there's a kind of a viral graph going around from the Financial Times just showing that in developed countries, the party in control is batting, 0 for whatever, losing major vote share. And so I think in hindsight, this was an economy that was difficult to run with unless you could really provide some distance. And I don't think Harris or the Democrats had an answer.
That's interesting. I saw those stats too. Incumbents are losing all across the globe, and it's all across the political spectrum. Mm-hmm. The Conservatives got dinged in England, Great Britain, in France also. That party, the centrists, lost. It's
Germany.
Germany. I have a thesis about this. The thesis that I have is that democracy and markets are roughly the same thing. It's very odd that you talk to some Democrats and they like democracy, but they don't seem to like the concept of markets. They're the same thing. And Democrats are offering a policy product in the market. What I fear is, more and more, they're starting to look like Burger King rather than McDonald's. Their hamburgers aren't selling. And one of the things I want to give to you is the Gallup Poll party affiliation. Now, for those listening on the radio, I'm just going to describe these numbers, but for those who are on the video, I'm going to put these up on the screen. The Gallup Poll has a survey that it's been doing, I think, since the 1940s. And it calls people up on the phone. This is longitudinal analysis. They do the same darn thing every year, every month, frankly, every 3 weeks, whatever it is. They keep doing it. And they ask people, what do you affiliate? Are you Democrat, Republican, or are you independent? And in the post-New Deal world, Democrats always were winning. They were winning. Then something funny happened in the 1990s. A majority of people began to say they were independent. The modal category was independent, the largest category. And this was called in political science dealignment. So then what happened is Gallup started asking these follow-up questions. They took the independents out and they said, listen, if you answered independent, which party do you lean? Do you lean Democrat or do you lean Republican? And for years and years and years, Democrats had the advantage in leaners. And that's what people would say. I would be teaching in political science department, and I'd say, look, dealignment is a thing. And people would say back to me, no. The Democrats are the majority party. The Republicans are not the majority party. That the Republicans have trouble being the majority party. They would always say that. And one of the things they'd look at is the Gallup poll leaners. The leaners always favored the Democrats. Well, here we are, lo and behold, in an epic moment now, that has occurred in this poll, not one time, but for a full year, and continues on, and was very interesting in September of this year in the election. Gallup Poll has a web page. I'm going to show it to you. The people who are watching on video can look at it. They wrote in September of this year that it looked like Democrats were in trouble. They basically predicted this, that the weather was bad. And the weather was bad because Democrats no longer are favored as leaners. They call up America and ask them, what are you, Democrat, Republican, or independent? Most people say independent. Then they say, of the independents, which way do you lean? And now the Democrats are losing. So this is a brand new phenomenon. The fear is that Democrats are pushing away customers. They're doing something so that people are going to McDonald's rather than Burger King that's selling fewer hamburgers. And we all know how this works. If you're Burger King, you might have some people in the Senate, you might have some people in the House, but you're going to be losing the majority of the market share. You're going to be losing these elections. What do you say about the thesis? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think basically the Democrats have become a kind of a grievance party. We've been representing all these groups, rightly so. But on the other hand, I'm not sure that enthusiasm for all these groups has played well with Middle America. And so I think Middle America may have felt that they were not paid attention to. They let us know that they weren't particularly happy with the focus of the Democratic Party.
Dr. Hanna?
So one thing that I've seen, which is consistent with this as well, is that the Democrats have lost with people at the lowest economic level, I think for the first time in at least exit polls. And then they're succeeding at the top end. So this party that has historically been the working man's party is struggling to land that message at the moment. And it may be kind of what Fitz said, this challenge of trying to defend so many types of groups that you almost get twisted up. It's almost an impossible position. And I'm sure, I don't know who gave this expression, but this idea that that Republicans fall in line, Democrats fall in love. You guys have heard that, right? And it's this idea that like a Democrat they'll defect if you take away one precious position, in their direction, where Republicans they'll allow the most extreme kind of evangelical type of end to the most extreme pro-business, no taxes, libertarian type of end. They'll bring them all in and work with them. And I think Democrats do a little more disciplining and kind of bickering amongst themselves.
The issue is whether the Democrats are losing customers. There's a corollary to that. Also, the issue is whether Republicans are becoming a majority party. Now, for years and years and years, as political scientists, we would say, no, this was the party. Originally, this was the party of the Country Club Party in the 1980s. I mean, they weren't even close to being a majority party. When Reagan was winning, you had split ticket voting going on. I mean, so then as this moves forward, this conservative populism breaks out. What we said then was, well, this is actually going to hurt this party. We would call these people radio nuts affectionately. We didn't mean anything bad by that, But this is the radio party. These people on the radio, the conservative radio, it's really grabbing a lot of market share. Rush Limbaugh started this. And a lot of this is really, it's uneducated critique. To be honest with you, some of these people are proud that they didn't go to college. They say that. Sean Hannity says that. There's a number of them who say that. I mean, there's a couple who are different, but there's a number of them who say this. This isn't Bill Buckley's. Bill Buckley's not the one doing this. You know what I mean? Okay, so we had the diagnosis, and a lot of people had the diagnosis, especially when Hillary was running, that this was actually going to hurt this party. We were making fun of these people, like that Trump couldn't debate and all this, like you can't say this stuff in an election, blah, blah, blah. Then lo and behold, this thing ping-pongs in there in 2016 and wins, and most of us, myself included, called it a fluke. It was a fluke, it seemed to be. He lost by 2.1%. He got lucky, he ran the table in the states. We were saying, well, this shows that the election system is silly. But then, now, all of a sudden, we've got some other things going on. Not only does he win this state by 8 points twice, but now it's over 11 points. You can't look in this state at 11-point victory and say, oh, these are just the Trump voters. The word for that is this is the majority. The word for that is the Nixon used silent majority. This isn't a factionalized thing anymore, I don't believe. This time around, he didn't have a huge victory. He won by about 2%. I think the spread's going to be about 50 to 48, but he won. He won the popular vote this time. And I want to draw attention to one statistic here. It's the country preference for the House of Representatives. I'm not talking gerrymandering, the country preference for the House of Representatives. You add all this up, and these are what the stats look like. I'm assuming that this year the country preference that the Republicans won. Do you know that? Do we know that yet?
Don't.
Okay, so I might be premature, but here's the stats. Going back to presidential elections since 1996 going forwards, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This will be the 8th one. It looks like if they win, this time it's 4-4. It was before 4-3. Okay, so in presidential elections, there's as much going for Democrats as are going for Republicans in presidential elections in majority vote for the House. Now, in the midterm years, it favors Republicans immensely, 6-2. 6-2. That's usually because there's a Democrat in the White House and you lose seats in the midterm. There's a structural bias there. But still, this is what this looks like. You know, if you add it up, if they win the popular vote this time for the House, this football team is 10-6. We're talking about the Republicans. They're 10-6. And my question to you is very simple. Are we as political scientists missing this, living in a bubble, trying to say that this party isn't a majority party when it's starting to look like it? What do you say, Lee? About there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's magnified living in Ohio.
Right.
It's hard to miss how much it's changed here, even since I moved here in 2015. The only other thing I was going to say is just we're like 2 percentage points away from having a totally different conversation today, right? And that's what's interesting about this current era is just everything is just razor thin.
Yeah.
And you don't get Reagan and Nixon and Johnson types of blowouts where it says this is clearly who we are. Instead, it just seems so narrow and everything just seems so ephemeral. And I mean, you kind of see that with the way the chambers just keep flipping.
It's more like turn taking.
Yeah.
It's undermining your theory.
No,
You're saying that there's a Republican sort of...
what I'm saying is that they're equal with us now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're not it's not like we're the majority and they're some, roadkill people or the country club people. They're equal with us in terms of how many people back them. So what we need to do is understand that market when we're selling our hamburgers. And that means they have some good ideas. They have some bad ideas. We have some good ideas. We probably have some bad ideas. We can discuss what that is. I know specifically what I don't like about Democrats' public policies, but I know what I do like about them. I think I will use the expression about 65% of what the Democrats do I like, about 35% I don't. It's reverse with Republicans. They do about 30% of stuff that I like. So
it's the condiments.
So my point is, we need to understand this market.
And I think too, when I think of like the realignment theory, it often is paired with like blowout elections and says we're in a new era, the New Deal era, the 1896 McKinley era, all of that. But I think what we do have is a realignment, like the score looks the same, but what's happening underneath is totally different. And I think that is, I'm comfortable with saying Donald Trump has radically altered the coalitions in American politics.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's durable past him, I think is still anybody's guess in some ways, because there are folks who try to follow in his footsteps. It doesn't work.
I don't think you can say that this is, the theory of critical realigning elections and suddenly the majority shifts over. I think we are in a very unique situation with Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump is off the scene, I think politics will get a better picture of where the country is politically.
Oh, I think that's fair. I'm not actually saying that there's a realignment. What I'm saying is that Republicans need to be considered as a majority party. These two teams are equal in terms of that.
Everyone who's in power is losing right at the moment. Basically, I say Trump is kind of a unique figure.
The one thing I would ask you, Ed, because I think you're giving us more of a traditional Democratic diagnosis. They just want to see this as a traffic accident. What I want to know is the Gallup Poll survey. Do you expect it to go back, that leaners will start favoring Democrats? And what do we do with all these House elections, countrywide preference, where Republicans are 10-6? That's a pretty good number. So what do we do with all that? I think it's a mistake to see it as a traffic accident. What I would rather see is that this force is now legitimate.
Yes, I mean, I think the coalitions really have changed, and I don't know what kind of work it will take I feel like after every election, we say, what does the loser need to do? More so than kind of how is the winner going to govern. The old theory was, and this is a very elitist theory and a very pro-Democrat theory, that if everyone voted, Democrats would always win. But what we saw in these like recent specials is now it's the Democrats that are all locked in because we're more educated, because white suburbanites have really moved in droves towards the party. And kind of the irony is that silent majority is now falling with Republicans. And it's hard after like January 6th and everything to believe that Trump himself could come back. It's not hard for me to discount the fact that the Democratic Party is losing with non-white voters. And I think that is also a sign of this larger, kind of the ground moving underneath.
You are listening to Talkin' Shop. The next issue is
How to fix it.
This gets to the issue of, are the Democrats pushing people away? Are they losing customers? Maybe what we should ask is, how do the Democrats get this right? How do they fix it? The one thing I think we could say, these are basically two equal forces. If you had to draw up a plan, an opportunity, let's say you were a business person and you drew up an opportunity here. You say, okay, I'm a consultant and I'm going to tell you how Democrats can be really strong in 4 to 5 years. The consultant might say, why don't you let Trump win? Because what's going to happen in the midterms is you're going to pick up seats. You're probably going to take that House back. And you're going to have a really great chance against J.D. Vance to try to, or whomever, to try to get in there if you get your house in order. It's possible the Democrats could have all three institutions again, the president, the House, and the Senate in just about 4 years.
Yes.
What do you think about that, Lee?
I said earlier, basically, there was no silver cloud in this election, but you evidently have found a silver lining inside of this devastation that we have found.
I think you're absolutely right, though. I mean, I do think that these elections are more structurally kind of handled by events outside their own control, and that people just sour on whoever is governing. And one thing that troubled Biden the whole time is that 30% of Republicans didn't believe he won. So he had legitimacy crises at every turn. I would like to think the results and the turnout numbers and everything may make a few Republicans do some soul searching and say, oh, actually, this is kind of along a trend line and he just won. And turns out they're not rigged. Trump got to win this time. Maybe some people who believe Trump to be this almost like bigger, larger than life prophet type of character, maybe 4 years of him governing, like they'll get a little bit of that out of their system. Because I think part of the promise is what could have been had COVID and not Biden taken everything away from him. The spell might weaken if now he wins, he gets everything that he wants. He's putting in the right people this time. And then in 2 years, growth is sluggish, or we're in these conflicts, or forces outside of our control kind of bring everything down. So I do think that there's like an interesting way that the spell wears off by him being in versus him being out.
Well, what Lee is raising there is very interesting. It's a picture of what the second term is going to look like. What is Trump going to do, and how's all of that going to play out? I myself can't get a fix on this. I think any rational person couldn't, because it's Trump. I see two pictures here, two pictures. First of all, I'm going to give you the picture that Ed's not going to like. It's going to be the one that paints something somewhat rosy for him. And then I'm going to give you the more common picture, which I think is going to be what Lee is talking about. But here's the rosy picture. Trump never belonged to anyone but himself in the first place. And he's free. He's now free. He's now a free agent. He's free. He doesn't need these people to get reelected. If you remember, when he went in there the first time, he tried to float an immigration deal with the Democrats. And the people said, he was just saying that, he's being ridiculous. But the truth is, I believe the truth is, he had to pull that back off the table because he needed these people to get reelected. He needed certain entities to get reelected. He's going to be a lame duck in 3 years, and he knows that in the history books, he wants his face in the history books. He wants on Mount Rushmore, for crying out loud. This is who this guy is. He's got his name on the plane. And so if I were an advisor to him and say, hey, how are you going to get your name on the American plane? why don't you play for history and do some things that actually would have historical significance? Why don't you get us an immigration package that both sides can live with, or something like that? Now, obviously, I think it's highly unlikely that that's going to happen. This Trump is so funny. He's talking about these deportations and how everyone's going to be rounded up. But in public, he says these weird things like they have to go, but they can come back. We'll send them on the other side, then we'll let some come back in. Like he's double talking on this stuff. You know what I mean? So there is this one picture that this guy might throw even us another wild card. We don't know what the heck he's going to do. The other picture, however, the one that's more likely, goes like this. He's bitter about certain things. He is a petulant person. He is going to be cruel to certain people. And he's also going to do economically dumb things. Remember, this guy doesn't understand debt. And he wants to try to control the federal interest rate, the Fed and the interest rates and all that. And this guy could cause real problems. I mean, if the interest rate now is based on which party wins, this is going to be like Latin America or something in some countries down there. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm not an expert on all those countries, so I apologize. I'm sure there's like
bring
two.
Carlos back next.
Yeah, well, Carlos. We have Carlos on the show. He can help me. So, I mean, there's two pictures here. What do you see, Ed?
Well, I think the first picture you played is sort of basted with hope. I mean, I think unfounded hope, a new magnanimous Trump could emerge. We know who the guy is. He's 78 years old. He'll take over at 79. He's been nothing but a mean old man through most of his time here. So to decide that a leopard's about to change his spots at this particular point in time. Now, you did make a couple of comments. Other people had mentioned that he wants a Nobel Peace Prize. So if he could get something with Gaza and the Israelis, but again, I don't know. I'm not too optimistic.
Where are you on this, Lee?
I think it's a really interesting take, and it's not unthinkable. It requires more discipline than he's exhibited so far. Yeah. And I think there could also be a route, though, where he's just trying to indict Biden and Obama and everyone else, and just becomes like so small-minded in that way that this all kind of implodes. But the one thing he has, I mean, like, he walked back abortion in huge ways, and that didn't change one thing with the pro-life voters, right? And so he does have this leash that no one else really in American politics has had.
I think that backtracking on abortion, it was purely strategic. If there was one issue that they knew they were getting killed on, it was abortion. So he tried to he backed away on that particular issue. Do you think, then, let me put that question out, if the Congress passes a national abortion ban, will he sign it? I think he will.
I don't think.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
You don't think so?
Well,
no.
Okay.
But none of us know.
I hope for your scenario of Trump. But
It's not
for us, right?
Yeah, right.
I think the other question is what resistance looks like this time around. Because in 2016, you could say he won just by kind of a fluke with the Electoral College, etc. But I feel like this time around, there's a little more like soul searching and kind of acknowledgement that he's doing something right. And Bernie Sanders has a different answer than Seth Moulton, but as they kind of come out and snipe in these next few weeks, I'll just be curious to see what that looks like.
You are listening to Talkin' Shop. The next issue is:
Are Democrats slow learners?
Lee brought up an interesting issue. Let's put this on the table quickly. I say the Democrats will have a very interesting opportunity in 4 years, but they've got to get their act together. And the problem is, one of the theories in realignment, and I haven't said there's a realignment, but one of the theories is a party takes a while to learn what their problem is. I've tried to say that Democrats are losing market share. I've tried to say that they're not selling enough hamburgers. They're becoming Burger King. And I don't think inside the nest they think that. For example, around this table, I was surprised. I wasn't surprised. I think we all see similar issues. But in the party as a whole, I don't think they're ready to to say that, to see those issues. I see people saying things like this: she lost because she tried to be a moderate. I see people saying, we've got to do the Bernie Sanders thing. That's how they'll like us again. We have to be more leftist and more passionate and so forth. I think that's a big mistake, but I wonder what you all think about it. What do you think, Lee?
I'm more in the moderate camp, but I guess I know my own biases, right? And I guess we all maybe have that view. I think part of it is just when I think of people in my life who are kind of the low information swing type of voter, it is that kind of classic normal distribution. And so you just go a little to the left and you get 51 versus 49 or whatever. And one thing, though, I would say, though, back to your original point, what we've seen in American politics, it's like the thermostatic model. Conservatives come in, they turn up the conservative temperature, and then after one or two terms, we're like, can you back that off a little bit? And we kind of swing back. Yeah. So I think some of this is natural, but I think what they need, if you think of their big cycles, it's a once-in-a-generation type of politician. And I have some stuff from '04 that literally reads, the day after Kerry loses, it reads just like all the articles right now. They don't see the Great Recession. They don't see the war effort even turning uglier. And they barely see Barack Obama, right? He comes onto the stage in that convention. Yeah. And so I do wonder if the moment and the right person is just almost like dumb luck. It just kind of happens.
And I think the point you raised, Lee, earlier about the significance of the candidates themselves. If you look at the people we keep talking about, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and now Donald Trump, I mean, these were all very charismatic characters. Mm-hmm. They have sort of come on the scene and then dominated. So in a sense, it is the fact of who's really riding the horse at any particular time.
Have you guys been to any county fairs in Ohio? No. This is something that we do with the kids.
Yeah.
You will see entire booths of just Donald Trump garb, right? And there's this, but I do remember the Hope and Change shirts from '08, mm-hmm. and that kind of similar, more than just a guy who's running for president, they're like an icon.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are people right now who are like, I'm a Trump guy, that are gettable for the Democrats in 4 years. The only other thing I do wonder, in this era where I think the worst thing you can be is a career politician, I wonder if we're going to see more people from outside of public service find their way into these lanes. More outsiders from the left, too, who maybe argue they have some more credibility because they've succeeded in a capitalist market or something like that. So I wonder if that's going to be a part of this as well.
Listening to Talkin' Shop.
Professors and students making sense.